Ms. Falkenberg,
Here.
Mrs. Jones,
Here.
Ms. Lee Harris,
Oh, I'm sorry, here.
Mrs. Ryan.
Here.
All right, we've got everybody present. Just a matter of operating procedures, just to let our viewers know, today is a work session for us, a special meeting called, and it is not an opportunity for public comment. You will be able to view our work session here tonight as we go through our agenda items. As always, during our public meeting, the second one of the month, you can submit that public comment via email to the treasurer and we will get those addressed. I will say, due to the sensitivity of the nature and the state of affairs that our public schools are going through, we do acknowledge that a lot of people are trying to reach out. Those items are taking and being categorized. We have any public comment that you have issued to us to be addressed. We're hoping that our presentations this evening will address majority of those questions. And in the event, as always, we will respond to those public comments and questions that have came. We are thinking of going just to answer them on the web and put them on the board website to be answered as we get them, just to be prudent and mindful of people that have questions. So we hope that the things we go through today, that they answer a lot of your questions. So we can proceed directly to item 2, discussion items with Dr. Reed.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. If a few people did submit something, I do believe the presentation will cover most. If not, we'll follow up with it. I'll try my best to answer those. Not to identify the person, but I will try my best to answer that. So right now, I'm working with one screen, so I am going to stop presenting the agenda, and I will start to present another item here. And let me go back to. Give me a moment. Let's present. And okay, give me a moment here. I'm going to try something again, folks. And all right, so I just want to make sure that you can see on the screen where it says South Yucca responsible reopening August 4th. Would that be correct, Mr. Hill? Can you see that?
Yeah, correct.
I would say last month we presented, I think it was at the July 14th meeting, we presented a proposed plan of restarting the school year responsibly. I'm going to open what our state superintendent said sometime in June was a plan for the worst, hope for the best, and be ready to pivot on a dime. Let me tell you, that's not easy to do, but that's been the one thing I can say that's been constant is change. And so what I like to do is do an update with regards to our reopening. First of all, and foremost, I do stand by the fact that, giving folks an option of school-based or a virtual academy was definitely something, the right thing to do. And that is still part of the plan. But I think what I'd like to do is remind folks that as part of the plan, there was always going to be a factor that there may be a time that we had to go remotely. None of us imagined that the time would be before the actual school year came. And I'm going to refer to some of those things of the plan that we talked about. So when you look at our, at our goals here, is we really, wanted to provide the best possible education under the COVID-19 global pandemic and without sacrificing the health and safety of our students and our staff. When you look at our guiding principles, and I'm not going to read everything, we look to prepare to return to school remotely, and I'll explain some of that decision shortly. Provide a 100% online school. We want in-person instruction. Our goal is to still have school-based instruction. I feel very passionate about the fact that students need to be back in school. They need to see their teachers. Teachers need to see their students. We have special needs students that really need to have that face-to-face instruction. As I mentioned before, I've taught kindergarten, second, third grade, sixth grade, and been a high school intervention specialist. So I also know it's important for everybody back in school, but when you're learning to read, that's a real critical time. And so it's really very agonizing thing to have to, really plan for something for 2 months and then explain to you where the Cuyahoga County Board of Health comes out with some information. So this is actually taken from the July, I think 14th plan, or the one that was sent out on July 17th. Is really, we were making recommendations, and they were tentative. They're tentative based on health and safety guidelines, update guidance from the state, and those were some of the things that you never know how long or little this is going to last. So when you look at these are some of the things, again, for those watching for the first time, we incorporated information from the governor, restart plan on July 2nd, Ohio Department of Health. I'm in contact with my colleagues from other districts, and just a lot of information that we're not making this up on our own. That's the bottom line. So for those of you not familiar with, the Cuyahoga County Board of Health made a recommendation on July 30th, and there was some word, I think, a few days earlier with regards to a Q&A that they put out, and the superintendents. We had a meeting on July 31st scheduled with the Cuyahoga County Board of Health at 11:30. I actually sat in on that meeting, but however, the night before, the news broke in the news media with regard to the recommendation. We were all a little bit surprised that we weren't afforded the conversation first, and they still kept the meeting, and we all listened in and we all participated on the next day, but we were just looking at the timing. Just today, if you look at the note below there, first of all, the Cuyahoga County Board of Health said that I got this today as an update, that they are not making changes to the recommendations. And I don't know if that's because of all the different opinions that came out since they made the recommendation. But they did say that they would be adding an explanation of some of the data and their rationale that they have. So as I go through the next few slides, I guess there's been a lot of question and people have questioned their data. And this is, again, I don't have that information, but I was given notice that they are still keeping their stance of their recommendation to start remotely, but they may be updating or modifying some other things. So I can't present that to you at this time, and it's not included in these slides. So again, you can go to the Cuyahoga County Board of Health, and this is where a lot of this information is coming from, and really the bullet points. And again, I'm not one to read all the slides. We'll put this up on the website. But this is some of the things why they were basing their recommendation for schools to begin remotely. And I'll let a few moments, you could read through it. Everything from the positive rates shown by testing, hospital activity. And again, I don't know if that new information is going to come out with digging a little deeper into the data, and people want to know what that really looks like. And I'm told that they're going to be coming out with some more information. So we'll see how long that takes. Again, I'm going to keep going through this. Again, their recommendation was based on number of cases. And then we are currently in level 3 red. And that for those of you that aren't familiar, and I do have a visual, that level 4 purple is the highest in terms of risk and transmission. And Cuyahoga County is currently a level 3 red. So when you look at the other thing that has actually been questioned, and again, this is not for me to judge what information that another entity puts out, but this is the information that was put out in support of the recommendation. Not enough testing capacity for children, symptoms-based, deciding that they may be flu-like symptoms, could be isolating children for the flu and not COVID, and could bring up a number of different things. So again, I'm only giving you information that was posted on their website, but also supplied in a communication that went out to folks in Northeast Ohio. So, and you can see school settings outbreaks will cause community spread. And again, when I present this, it's not really about my personal feelings or anything like that. We wholeheartedly feel that we had a good plan in place. But I need to tell you, when this came out, it threw a huge curveball to our team, and a little bit of a gut punch for actually doing over 2 months of work to be able to have a school-based start option for our students. And I think that's something folks need to know, that we need to continue to keep in our plans. So for the visual folks out there, this is, again, the risk levels. And if you look, we're in level 3 right now, very high exposure and spread, limited activities, as much as possible. And then level 4, you can read, is severe. So we are in level 3. There's been so much put out. This slide right here, whoops, let me go back, was actually in the July 14th work session presentation. So I guess what I'm saying, the folks, is that, I know we've been giving out a lot of information, but the decision made to start the school off remotely was something that we were looking at all along, that if we went in the red, that would be something that we would have to do. To be honest, the discussion was, we really thought we can get the school year open and bring our kids to school base. And then there was the possibility that, we would have to go remote. And that was always in the plan, that those that choose virtual was virtual. And then those that were school-based, that there was a likelihood sometimes that we would have to go, well, not likely, a remote because of a school closing, such as the one in Indiana. I don't know if people saw it last night. I think after a few days of being open, they had to close, or in this case, a recommendation. You can have a play on words. And we asked the folks this in our meeting on Friday was, well, it's a recommendation, not a requirement. And basically, they're not going to use the word requirement because they can't impose that on there. And I'm just giving the answer they did. I'm paraphrasing it, that the recommendation is the strongest thing that they can be able to give based on their data, their evidence. And so, that's a tough one. That's a tough. I mean, we want to follow the health experts when someone contracts COVID, and we want to follow their guidelines because they're the experts. And when they make a recommendation that we don't agree with, again, whether it's personal or not, either we're going to agree with it or not, or be able to pick and choose. So this actually was, like I said, was not one that we expected. I mean, we knew it could happen, and we were planning for that it might happen, but we certainly thought the momentum was going with school districts. And I'm not the only one saying this. A lot of superintendents had plans in place. Many announced it way before we did. And so, this was quite a bit of I don't want to say a surprise, but again, a little sooner than we thought. I think, again, I'm an educator. I am not a health expert. I guess the point becomes we can reject or we can accept it. And I think we can, at this point, accept that recommendation. I don't know, again, you can challenge that, how long that has to be. They are talking about coming out with modifications to it. I think that's something we can always revisit. I think one thing I've gotten used to the last 5 months is nothing stays the same. And I think the hard thing for us as a school leaders is that, we're pretty, you make a decision and you want to stand by it. And then all of a sudden, you get more information, and it's sometimes conflicting information. And that's when you got to press pause. So, it was really a difficult decision in the sense of, do we go ahead and go against the recommendation of the Cuyahoga County Board of Health? I think, that's what it comes down to. And I don't know whether anybody's wants to do that, but that is something that I don't feel is in the best interest. If we tell them we're talking about the safety of our students and our staff, having the full-blown opening up school seems to be something they're asking us to delay. So what does this mean? That students will engage in remote learning. Again, that was always a part of our plan. And then, so this is when we had to sit and flip it. So we started thinking, well, do we let those kids start in the virtual academy, all those folks that started off, and then we take the school-based students, we put them remote. And really that would have made no sense for our teaching staff. And so we kind of, Mr. Cape and I looked at each other and said, well, we got to flip that. We have to just, because the county came out with this, that we'll have everybody on the same path. And then as we start to see how the school year opens up, and as we, every 2 weeks they put things out, that we can actually start to, those families that I still want to go the virtual academy for the semester, we could start now to migrate them towards that as we see how the next few weeks in the first quarter moves along. And then we can also see, like we've also started folks off remotely, but we can also see if that opens up, then we're ready. We're going to continue to be ready to go with school-based learning. So that's the piece where we felt like all of us, when we saw this happen, it made no sense to have two different platforms. We needed to flip it. Let's get everybody on the same page. Let's set our norms. Let's work with our teaching staff that way. And then this way we could start to, again, like I said, migrate them to different learning options as we see what happens over the first quarter. I think this answers one of the questions that came in with regards to, okay, the students were supposed to start on the 31st. Why move it back to the 8th? And the teachers were supposed to start on the 17th. Why move it back to the 24th? Well, to be honest with you, we, the central office team, needed more time to really get more teachers involved with regards to remote learning. We wanted, we had to plan to by grade bands, what are going to be the expectations. We want to work with the teacher leaders over the next few weeks, because before we bring back the whole teaching staff, we had to reorganize a little bit how we were doing it, because now we were going to have everybody that was going to have to do remote learning. So we were setting norms and focusing on, if I'm a third grade teacher and I'm Mrs. Reed, I'm third grade, and if Mrs. Ryan is a third grade teacher, again, when you're remote learning, you have to make sure that, as they're developing the lessons, that wasn't exactly we had time to do in the spring. And that's something that we need to get right this time. We need to develop, one thing our parents have asked us is they applaud what happened in the spring. They felt our teachers did a really good job, but they wanted structure. They wanted to resemble more like a student day, a teacher day. And again, those are things that we have to work through, with our teaching staff of what that looks like. So to answer that question, we really needed a little bit more time before we start bringing the whole teaching staff back to be able to know, how we're going to do things. For instance, music. I know music was being taught at home, but we've bought 150 cameras. I mean, now our music teachers have an opportunity when they're in their classroom to be able to utilize more than just, their home office and be able to do things. So there's different software that have to be bought and different things. So those are some of the things why we needed a little bit more time. So I kind of hope I answered that question. And of course, we can go more into details. So, we realize that not only teachers need an orientation on different things, that our families are going to need it. And I think that's the thing that we also want to take time. So again, I'm just giving a snapshot a little bit. And Mr. Cable, feel free, because I know you've been working on this very hard. If you want to kind of go ahead and join me here, it will look different. In the spring, we were all in a crisis, and we had a primary goal of getting some type of normalcy to our students. The fall will look different. And I know I keep drawing that point home because our teachers did an outstanding job. They were being creative. They were doing everything possible in a 72-hour period to stay home. What our families are asking for, and Dr. Motley did this survey in June, is that they want it to look different. And really what they're saying to us, if it doesn't look different with the rigor, then they're going to go to an online school that has been doing it for years. And so we really need to get it done. We need, I guess, that's what we call it 2.0. We need to notch it up a level. Mr. Cable, is there anything you want to add while I go through this?
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to jump in there. Good evening, everybody. Just to piggyback off what Dr. Reed just said from the principal's perspective as well. At Memorial last year, I remember having numerous conversations, a couple full group staff meetings, during the pandemic when it originally hit. And I heard the teachers, and I was honest with them. You know, they're teachers. They're great at their job, and they wanted to keep the rigor. They wanted to keep, you know, the pace. They wanted to do all of those things that they were doing in the classroom, and the social emotional piece, and the not knowing where kids were doing at home, and how was their new norm going, and making sure that every one of their needs was met. Every school district in Ohio ended up going with the pass fail piece and things like that. And our new remote learning, like I was explaining to the principals, and I'm going to roll out to the teachers, is, you know, that was the spring. We all got our pass. It was the fourth quarter. It was a pandemic. I remember talking to Miss Newton about it, and she goes, you know, sometimes it's just bigger than us. And at that time it was, you know what I mean? And now it's our duty to make sure that our remote learning platform is everything to the best of our ability for our children to grow and to catch up from some of the things they missed fourth quarter. And like Dr. Reed was saying with the cameras, we actually have 200 cameras coming. Those are being shipped on Friday. We found they were very difficult to find. We found them last second. Thank you, Joel Alessandro. And with our Schoology platform and the easy syncing that we're going to be able to do, and with our teachers having everything at their fingertips, we're really excited. And we have some different things to go through here throughout the PowerPoint. If you have any questions, just keep shooting.
And thank you. And one of the things to look at, again, I'll try to, I know there's not public participation, but I do feel like in light of the sensitivity of this issue to answer this. The question is the teachers did a great job in the spring. If they did a great job in the spring, you know, and the health department says that, you know, learning from home or working from home remotely is acceptable. You know, why would we spend taxpayers' dollars to open up our buildings and just ask teachers to come back to the classrooms when their students aren't going to be there? First of all, I'm never about wasting taxpayers' dollars. But what I can tell you, if I'm going to spend, and if we're going to spend money anywhere, it's going to be on instruction and delivering on the highest level of instruction for our students. And guess what I'm saying too, and I don't want it at all to appear like they didn't do a good job. They did a great job with everything that they could. But how do you replace, if I'm doing a science experiment, now I got this you know, high resolution camera, and I'm able to actually do it in front of the students rather than them seeing a video. I think that was one of the things that our parents were saying. They, you know, we're looking for some more live interactions. You know, and if I'm working with manipulatives, I'm an elementary teacher, and being able to really, you know, sit there and show what I'm manipulating while I'm talking. I'm a visual learner. I could see going to the interactive whiteboard behind me because we have this camera, and you can be able to, the teacher can be able to do, you know, show a formula and be able to feel that sense of it's more of actually the instruction that they're used to. So there is really, I think, again, if you know, since students aren't going to be there, and we're always very mindful. I mean, there's laws that we have to follow. You know, we have a 12-page safety and health guideline protocol that we've instituted. Our cafeteria workers have been working since March 17th, feeding folks every day. We've been able to haven't had one outbreak. We follow protocols. Our custodians have been cleaning buildings. Our administration building has been open. We've supplied plexiglass for our secretaries in our administration building, and so we've really that is our responsibility. It's our responsibility as an employer, any employer, to make sure we have a safe working environment. And that's something actually for those of us who've been back at work have been doing it, you know, for months. And you know, we're going to supply a face shield for folks. I mean, again, there's all those things that we need to make sure that we have in place, training, and again, using all those guidelines. So, you know, that's where the fact of really thinking that if we talk about remote 2.0, then something has to be done differently. And I think that's really the folks that we serve is what they're asking us to do. And
Linda, I have a question before you slide through that slide. So I just want to go back to Dom's statement. So we talk about the cameras. So what does that look like? And if it's down the list, please tell me. Is that further down your list, your slideshow about addressing cameras and what that looks like? I don't want to jump ahead.
No, it's not. Go ahead.
Okay. So my question is, how does that look? Does every teacher have a camera? Is it going to be on during their time period to where it's almost as if their kids are sitting in the seat, but they have them on a Zoom screen? How does that look when you say that?
So it's kind of a multiple answer for you. So each teacher will have a camera accessible to them. It can either go into their desktop or their issued Chromebook or device. And our expectation after, what Dr. Reed was saying is that our families needed more interaction. They wanted that virtual schedule. They want to be able to see their teacher interact with them. So this camera will be able to have our teachers be live with their students and be able to post lessons on Schoology and be able to have one-on-one conversations and be able to get up on their Epson boards and on their smart boards and manipulate, if you're in math, and manipulate different problems and show the students and have that interaction with them that a lot of schools, including us, we missed a little bit in the spring, was that one-on-one attention in that full group, whether it's direct teaching or you're in small group for the differentiated instruction. And that's what these cameras are going to allow. And with the resources that we have available and with being able to sync it with Schoology and into the Google Classroom, it's going to be really nice. So you're going to see through here, I don't want to spoil the rest of it, but there's going to be certain expectations laid out and what that'll look like for parents, students, and teachers, and with that live interaction.
Okay, and then the other question I have is, and maybe that's what you're talking about down the line, when we talk about platforms, because I sit on the board and I'm a little confused too. So does that mean, I think I understand it right. So does that mean everybody will be on remote learning? There will not be any ARCS Virtual Academy, which also translates to no Apex? Does that put the high schoolers on the video camera with the kids? That's why we scrapped Apex?
Correct. So when we got to pivot on Thursday, Dr. Reed said when her and I were talking instantly after that, we did postpone and suspend AVA. The reason that was because in our original plan we had the AVA, but that was with the school-based kids that would go to remote if we got code red. Well, we didn't get there yet with the school-based part. So instead of integrating two different platforms, so instead of having a virtual academy along with remote learning and all these entities, we didn't need that anymore because now we know that our first 9 weeks, our first quarter is going to be all remote learning. And then if we have the opportunity to come back, Mr. Williamson's fully ready on the way he's setting up his schedule to roll that in right with the high school kids, and we'll through the remote process. That makes sense,
Okay.
Ms. Jones?
That definitely answers my question, Mr.
Okay.
Capel. Thank you. And then I'll just put this on the table as we proceed through the slides. And once we get to the end, I guess we can kind of elaborate it. The word accountability. So I'll leave that there. And I think I see Neil with a question.
I do. Thank you, Cassandra. Actually, a follow-up to what Mr. Capel was saying, how teachers will be able to do a live lesson with their camera, which I think is wonderful. However, we all know that one of the biggest challenges with any at-home learning through this COVID is that younger students might not have the support because a parent or parents have to go back to work. And so they rely on older students in the home to assist with that. So they will not necessarily be able to sit in on that live presentation. Will those live presentations all be video, or should I say captured, so that those students can go back later and view what was shown earlier?
Great question. I put it to the next slide, and Mr. Capel, you can go ahead and take it. And I want to put this out there too, because I don't want, we have folks that we want to present to parents, because again, parents are choosing what they want to do. And we want them to know that it is we've upped our game, but I also want to know that the teachers listening is the fact that we are going to work on what that daily schedule looks like. But I think what we need to be clear on is that we all found out that that's important to be able to have. So Mr. Capel, that kind of goes along the lines of what Mr. Bloomberg asked, if you want to share this slide.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mr. Bloomberg. As you can see in this slide, so we talked a lot today. I met with K3 and the 4-6 principals and looking at our schedule and our expectations. And as you can see there on the second bullet down, about sessions will be recorded to provide flexibility. That came from Ms. Bussey and Ms. Thompson, and the importance of that, because we do have a lot of homes that have multiple children in them, and some will, like you said, you know, if I'm a high school kid and I have an elementary student, I'm going to have some responsibility with them. So attendance will be taken the following day. So if I'm a math teacher, just easy for me is Mr. Romanoff. If I'm putting a lesson on in Memorial Junior High and I'm live with my students, that lesson from the video also automatically records and saves into his Google Drive and will be available on Schoology right in the database. So as a student, I click on Mr. Romanoff's class, that video is sitting right there. If it's 10 o'clock at night, I can watch it, go through it for my asynchronous, and then catch up on the learning from the day, and then hopefully be able to attend the next day. But every lesson will be going to an archive.
Thank you, Mr. Capel. I don't think
That's wonderful. Thank you.
So I'm going to keep moving through here. And I will have, so again, this is just giving a snapshot of student skills. And we talk about how important time management is. I think we all found that out in you know, talking to some parents in May and in June. That was a new thing that their child or their student had to learn. And that really, I think a set schedule really will help on that piece. For our students, again, in communication skills, and that. So again, just giving a snapshot, a little bit about some of the areas that we've looked at. I don't want to belabor it too much. And then when you look at the teacher expectations, Mr. Cape, I'll throw it back to you again, because I know this is something that you've been working on the next few slides.
So just to go through these real quick. And again, these are just the, you know, over base of everything. When we meet with our BLTs, the principals are starting to set up their BLT meetings for next week, gave them the green light on that to bring their leadership teams in. Our teacher expectations, good instructional practices are to be followed, only delivery method has changed. We're looking at it even though we can't be in school, okay? And with the resources that our teachers are going to have in their classroom, that we're going to be able to deliver this in a strong way that doesn't harm our expectations and keeps that going. Any information as direct instruction of content, student will be recorded. So that's what we just talked about, that we'll be able to archive everything. And online learning will provide a engaging experience for students and consist of interaction. So what we want with that is when we talk about the synchronous and the asynchronous learning today, especially for those kiddos, you know, in the K3, and you know, it's going to be hard for them. I have elementary daughters, and when if we're looking at a scheduled time and they have ELA, what we're looking at doing is taking that and dividing that in half. So the teacher will be looking at synchronous learning. And again, none of this is fine. We're going through our BLT, but I just want to be as transparent as possible. So then a teacher will be looking at a 12 student full screen instead of a 24 full student screen, which will allow them to split it, incorporate small groups. And after we get a feel for where those kids are after September and looking at our assessment data and some different things, then we'll be able to really plug in where those students should be based off their ability level.
Mr. Cable, I have a question. I know the students are not supposed to be videotaped and then that information put out. So a lot of I'm not sure about the elementary schools, but a lot of the high school and middle school, I think, lessons are probably discussion. Is there a way that can be done without videotaping the students?
Mr. I know you have a platform. I know a few times when I actually was working on the college level and I was doing interviews with different folks, there's a protected piece that not everybody can see. It's not shared. So I don't know whether if I'm answering that question, but Mr. Cable, thoughts on Ms. Falkenberg's question?
Yeah, so you're talking, Ms. Falkenberg, just to clarify. So you're talking about if I'm in a live session with my teacher, like you guys are now, and I can see your face, type of thing. Is that what you're saying?
Right. If a teacher's teaching from the classroom, a science lesson and students are being asked questions or part of a discussion, can they be videotaped, or can the discussion be part of the learning experience without videotaping the kids?
So
Go ahead.
the video, go ahead, sorry, go ahead, Dr. Reed.
Well, there's two things, and Mr. Cable, you're the technology guru. Remember,
Yeah.
students, are actually on their own computer. They're not in the classroom with the camera. It's just the adult. Is that what you're going to say, Mr. Cable?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because the kids will be at home just like you guys are. So when they're logged in and things, with their video preference, we'll look through that just like we do with all the EMAs every single year. And there's also nice other platforms. Dr. Reed was talking about Blackboard when she was going through finishing up her schooling. Schoology is very similar, and there's also discussion boards on the side. There's different options. You can go into small group discussions. You can go into all these different avenues, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so they will, the video camera is only going to save what the teacher is doing and presenting.
Right.
So,
And many of our teachers did that with their laptops, but we're also talking about that's limited for some folks. And, when you have a camera, it's a wider area, it's a higher resolution, a little bit more better quality. I mean, that's just another means. They've used that method before, just another means using a camera as an example.
Thank you.
And then again, Mr. Capel, since you've been working on this, why not? I'm not gonna lead this parade to the parent expectations. So we've tried to hit every area. Students, teachers, and parents. Go ahead.
Sure. So this is a biggie. I always preference the parent expectations. When I came home after the first day of COVID, and I was back at work, and I came home, and my wife was resigning as a teacher of my own children after one day. So I get it. Okay. The parent expectations. The biggest thing is, we're going through this, is that ensure that your students are engaging in those activities. Coach them up. Be positive with them. Encourage the students to seek help when stuck or frustrated. Another thing that Melissa was showing me through all the data that we've collected from all the parents was, they really wanted some more one-on-one time. So we're going to have office hours built in. We're going to have time for parents to actually communicate through either Schoology or through Google Hangouts with their teachers. And we're going to build that into the teacher schedule for them. We're going to communicate academic concerns with instructors. It's got to happen. Stay informed of all course requirements and deadlines. That's why we heard you when you said you wanted a one-stop shop, and I get it. And that's why Schoology came into play. That's going to be the easiest way for you to stay informed. Our teachers are unbelievable in the Google platform. It fully syncs into Schoology. And for those teachers that aren't as familiar with Google, Schoology is just as easy to use as Facebook for them. And that's where this task force is going to. And please let your building principal know if things are going on, communicate with us. I always preference with this is, we have this beautiful plan, and I always use the terminology that's not schools are never a straight road, no matter if you're COVID or not. We're going to hit some bumps, we're going to hit some curves, and keep communicating with us and keep reaching out. But again, you got to be that coach. You got to be the positive coach. You got to be the coach that gets after them a little bit and sets the expectations at home for us. And then our teachers with their capabilities and with all the resources they're going to have at their hands in their classrooms. And we need to look at this as a partnership, not as us, not as a negative. And if you have questions, just ask. And that's about as honest and simple as I can make it.
I wanted to go back. Thank you, Ms. Cable. I want to make sure, just before we go, let me go back to this one, because there's another question that was asked. And I think we can go more into it. They talk about how will remote education be flexible with parents and guardians who both work during the school year. It would be extremely difficult to be available during school hours while working to maintain the household. And when will the schedule be available for my child's education? So, again, I think this hits part of it, of the person that asked this question. So we have flexibility. Ms. Cape, I don't know if it's included in this point, but I know that you talk about working with the building leadership teams and developing a schedule. And I guess this parent is asking, I'm not going to hold you to it because I know it involves other folks. What's the thoughts about when parents can kind of see what that schedule looks like?
I will tell you, I met with a total transparency, met with the principals today. Our timeline is this, just to make it simple. So we had our pivot on Thursday. I was actually mid presentation with the principals on their return week when Dr. Reed smiled and said, "Look at your phone," and we did it. That's when we started the pivot. So Friday they brainstormed. Monday morning we hit it rolling. And we had some athletic things, extracurriculars to get going. They worked in their buildings today. We met. Schedules are going to be sent to me Friday, and the BLTs are going to be rolled in with the teachers next week. And parents, I would say, let me take a look at my calendar real quick. I don't want to misspeak. So we have the BLTs coming in next week, Dr. Reed, and they will have it at least a week and a half, 2 weeks before school. No doubt about it. And I'll have a further update on next Tuesday.
No, thank you. I wanted to, as where President Jones said that, it wasn't be able to have the exact questions, trying to hit some of the questions that did come in. And trust me, there will be some follow-up as well, but I did want to try to hit that in the presentation. Ms. Thompson, I know that you and Ms. Bussey have been working a lot on the parent support piece here. So if you would like to share a little bit about the next few slides. I think we talk about, not just supporting our staff, but also, and our students, but how do we support our parents? Because that was a big piece too. And there are folks, I remember some of the board members even telling me, help, no, we can't keep doing it like this. And so, Ms. Thompson, if you want to generally speak on that, of how we're looking to support our parents during this time.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Reed, and good evening to the board. Thank you for the opportunity to share. So we have, again, as part of the pivot, but even throughout the process, have been committed to providing support to our families. Certainly with a fully remote learning platform, we know that outreach and support that's necessary, not just for the students, will also be necessary for our parents. I think in one discussion with Mrs. Bussey and Dr. Reed recently, just speaking about that need to provide either virtually or socially distanced outreach, home visits, activities to keep parents motivated, encouraged, inspired, and supported. Certainly we'll be doing those things for our students, but we do know that for some of our parents, this is quite overwhelming. We've been receiving some telephone calls already of just parents wanting to speak with us and most specifically to Mrs. Bussey in that manner. I know in the next slide with that technology, yes. Dr. Reed, wanting to make sure that parents have the technology, the supplies, the skills that they need. So if that means that we are offering opportunities for parents to log on with us in conversation and in those supports and navigating the Schoology site, we're certainly willing to do that. If that means hosting small groups to help families, to help parents know what to do, how to submit assignments, since we will not provide, the paper supplies, but rather helping parents to even know where to go online and even to receive support services, having a platform so that parents can request support if their child is experiencing some frustration, some anxiety, because again, that was something else that we heard from families during this time of, being away from friends and not having that connection. So we are actively planning our intervention plans to support our students and our parents in this way.
Thank you. Let me see what's next here. Hold on. Mr. Capel, I guess we need to get to the student expectations. Thank you, Ms. Thompson.
Yeah, so students' expectations is to, engage daily. We coincided these with some of the parent expectations. Coincide daily in courses and participate in class discussions. We want that interaction. We heard you from our surveys. Mr. Williamson and I were able to get a survey out to our kiddos before the end of the year through their email and had a great response. And that's what they wanted. They wanted more interaction with their teachers. So I'm asking them now, to be accountable and help us out and make sure that you are engaged. Students are required to submit all work-based timelines outlined by the teachers via the online platform used by the district. And it's pretty self-explanatory. It's no different if you were in the classroom and you got handed something and it's due, that the expectation is the same. And, instead of it being due second period, now it's going to be due on maybe this day, depending on what assessment that is, or if it's homework, or however you want to drop that in. So pretty self-explanatory on the student expectations. And the big thing is accountability. They got to help us out. I hear you all. I stopped by Bexley Park the other day and was talking to some of them, and they want to come back. I get it. You know what I mean? But right now, that's not what we can do. So we need them. I was talking to them. I was talking to some of the football guys the other day before we got shut down. We need you guys to step up and be leaders in the classroom for us and help us out and give us feedback. So
thank you. So let me go back here. We're just going to go through a few things. We'll be posting this. Again, people, they want to know what would look different. Again, we talked about, we did pass fail because that's something that we were comfortable with in the spring. Parents didn't like it. And we understand that, and we don't disagree. So you could look at grading and feedback. There'll be, again, just a different way that we're doing it, but things that we're familiar with, report cards. Students taking high school courses will receive credit. Students will be required to complete their assignment to earn the credit. Incomplete courses will not earn credit. So again, just some of the things that's really taking what we know and what we've done with grading and feedback, and now it's to be done in a different platform. So again, just a snapshot there. Again, because people are asking, I keep going like a broken record. So what's going to look different than what we did in the spring? And we're trying to address those areas.
Linda, can I ask a quick question about grades? Will those still be in progress book, or how is that going to be handled?
We want to talk about how that, I know it's compatible with Schoology, but
yep. I got it. Yep. Hey, Ms. Ryan. They will be in progress book, and Mr. Morton already has Schoology set up where it's all going to sync together too. So if I'm a parent, and if I'm a parent and if I click on Greg, use Greg as an example. If I click on his teacher and I use that, then his grades will be there, or it'll be right in your progress book too.
Okay, that's good to know, because we're going to have to watch Greg. We know how that goes. One more question about the schedule before we move on, because I know this is like a question that's been asked a lot about on Facebook, like concerns about. So our kids with the schedules, when they're set up, the expectation is not going to be that a child's going to be sitting at a computer for like 7 hours face to face with a teacher, correct? If you could just kind of, calm some parents' fears about that, because I think that's a big thing that's going online, and there's discussion as like how many hours is that going to look like on a daily basis?
So Mr. Cable, again, I know you've been working today with the K-3 and the other folks, and again, we want to answer the parents' question, and we totally get that, and also remember too, with our teachers, again, that's something that we want to build by grade band with them, but that definitely is something that is discussed, and we realize that you're not going to get a 7-year-old, and nor should they. And this is actually when our encore teachers, as they call it, the elementary level, the music and the art and some of the different things and those activities would be really important as well. But Mr. Cable, go ahead and share what some of your thinking discussion was.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually perfect timing, because it's actually
is
perfect timing.
I don't know what I'm missing.
Oh no, you're good. After meeting with the K6 today, and what we're looking at is, so just for easy understanding, if I'm a student in the elementary building and I have ELA I'm doing synchronous learning for 30 minutes, and then I go to asynchronous. We build in transitions. So before that kid would log into math or go to his next class, there's a 15-minute transition. So instead of transitioning in the hallway for 3 or 4 minutes, I'm going to make sure that those kids get a screen break. And for the elementary too, we build in playtime at home. Mr. Dugan is going to be working with the PE teachers on some different activities. And they're going to include electives that will hopefully, get those kids up and moving a little bit. But to answer your question, without going too long-winded, absolutely, there's breaks between all of their courses. It's just like transitioning. We build in lunch, we build in recess, we build in, screen time breaks, even for the high school kids, junior high kids. If anybody's listening, you've been asking me for recess for years. So, here's here's your little break. Here's your playtime, because I get it. You got to get up and stretch, and so do adults. You know, I when this whole thing started, I was losing my mind. I really struggled for a while for how much screen time we had to have. Being more of a mover type person, and I get it. So yes, that will be built in throughout each day, and especially for those elementary kiddos, we're trying to get them to log on at the beginning, somewhere in the middle, and then at the end. So hit your ELA somewhere in the middle for an elective and towards the end.
And one of the things Terry was as well as I didn't realize it, but there's a music software, and I know I guess there's a few out there, and I was talking with the members of the music department that actually that the student can practice, playing a piece, and that actually it will give them feedback. It will give them, so the teacher can't be there with everybody. You can do some small group and everything like that, but there's actually a software out there that the student can practice, and the software will give them the feedback to correct their errors and different things. So we're looking at different ways. Again, when I make an example of the music department, when we talk with the music and art department, is they want to be able to keep up their musicianship, and I say to them, well, how do you do that remotely? And there are some great ideas they have, and so through software. So I guess to also answer your question, those folks that play an instrument, if everybody can't be together, there has to be ways with regards to that they can be able to continue to practice and things like that. Catherine, I think you were going to ask a question before I started. Okay.
I forgot. I'm sorry.
Okay. Maybe it'll come back on the next screen. So yeah,
I do have a question, Linda.
Yeah.
While we were talking about grading and feedback, and we were talking about utilizing Progress Book. Is Progress Book down now because we're trying to rebound back from the pass fail period?
I can't answer that. If you don't know, we'll get back to folks. Everybody know about Progress Book?
Yeah. Oh, perfect.
Yeah, Progress Book is shut off during the summertime, all summers, until the new kids are loaded, until they get scheduled again. Because that, unfortunately, a grade book can't erase anybody's name out, because if it transfers, they wouldn't be able to, the last thing you'd want is their grade erased. So you really flip on Progress Book the last second that you can, hopefully a day before school, maybe 2 days before school, so that all the changes are made beforehand.
Okay, that's understandable, because some people were trying to print report cards for college apps and it wasn't accessible. So that's understandable. And then I know we're going to use the Progress Book. The teachers are going to use the Progress Book to track missing assignments and stuff. But is that going to be tied into as well, like teachers with parent notifications to allow them to maybe schedule office hours to talk about the status of their kid?
Yeah, Ms. Jones, and they'll be able to see that too in the Schoology platform, what assignments your kiddos missed and what they need to get caught up on. And through the Schoology too, it's very easy just to drop a message to the teacher. And yes, those office hours and different things like that, that's what that's set up for that communication purposes, and in case students need extra help or you have questions about assignments.
Okay. And then, I appreciate that, because what I want parents and families to understand is that this is a partnership. Like, we all have to do our piece. And I know we won't perfectly do the teaching piece, and teachers won't perfectly do the education piece with parents not there, and kids can't do everything, but we need to work together. And when we talk about working together, I'm being facetious, but I'm just going to ask. I really hope the governments and the states really take this opportunity to look at the remote learning that they've kind of thrusted us into, just like they came from out of the barn with the foreclosure remedy assistance. They came with all the utilities not turning off, utilities for families because people were out of work. I really hope somehow, I know we can't tell them what to do, but I hope they do come out with some kind of assistance with us for that. We got all these kids in all these counties and districts staying home. So think about those light bills, those gas bills, those internet bills. I'm sorry if there's a Spectrum person here. I appreciate it. But when you come with that Spectrum stuff about free internet, and it has to be a person who isn't a Spectrum user, that is crazy to me. So I'm just hoping we can all realize that we're all part of one big recipe and we all have working hands in it. So that was just my plug.
I was actually going to ask that same question, Cassandra. Like, is there a way that I don't know if this will come from Ms. Bussey or Ms. Thompson's office, that we can see about maybe even our district partnering with AT&T or the Illuminating company and the gas company to assure that our students are not without those services, because unfortunately without those services, you can't expect for them to get an education even with being at home. So to assure that, we reach out to our parents and our community to make sure that they don't, or if they have any needs, if we can assist them with that.
So if I may, Dr. Reed, is that okay?
No.
That is something that certainly, any time that we receive, notices, information with regard to services that are being extended to families during these times, we want to reach out, we want to ask questions and do our due diligence to provide information to families throughout the closure period. When we received information, we did post that online. And we want to continue to do that. Certainly having Mrs. Bussey available as the Family and Community Engagement Coordinator is a wonderful thing because she'll be in the position to also make those linkages and make sure that the information posted is yet still relevant and available. And so by all means, thank you, Ms. Lee Harris, for even sharing that, and Ms. Jones, that we will do our due diligence to follow up and to make sure that whatever information we have is available to parents.
Thank you.
I have one more question real quick because you were on the feedback and the correspondence before we move on. Are we encouraging Class Dojo this year? Yes or no? I guess we're doing Schoolology and Progress Book with all of that as well. Class Dojo can be an added frustration for some parents, so that's why.
Correct. Yes, correct. That's where that one-stop shop comes in, Ms. Harris.
Yep. Actually, the idea was just to streamline everything again, because if you have multiple children, absolutely. I have 3 kids, and if I'm trying to navigate different ways, that was a frustration. Nobody's fault. It's just it was actually an issue that came to light when we were forced to do that. So we're corrected that with Schoology, and we can integrate that. So, but thank you. Attendance and course completion. Again, you can read it. I don't know whether Mr. Cable or Ms. Thompson wants to comment on it, but again, there's going to be a difference with regards to what happened in the spring and the expectations. So if we have our students listening out there, first of all, we miss you, but there is actually going to be a lot more structure. I guess everybody's got to up their game a little bit. We did a great job, but everybody has lessons learned, and there's things that we have to get done.
I will say this, Dr. Reed, if I may, with regard to attendance and course completion, we do recognize, and I think even to Mr. Bloomberg's point earlier, that some families may or may not be able to log on at the time that the lesson is being delivered live or whatever the case may be. And so if there is an attendance or a course completion component that we need to investigate, this gives us the opportunity to understand the why of what's occurring. So if the student has not logged in, or if something's not being submitted, what's the why behind that? Is there a need that we must address to support that family? Is it something where there is a miscommunication or misunderstanding with regard to the expectation, and try to do everything that we can to mitigate and to reduce those barriers, so that if it is a matter of something that is feasible for us to address, we want to again be responsive to that and not automatically assume that the lack of participation is a desire to not comply, but rather what again is the reason for the inability to make that connection.
Thank you. Accommodations, and again, Ms. Moles, I know you're on. Again, this is a huge challenge for everybody involved, and services may differ than the traditional setting, but an IEP, their individual education plan, needs to be followed. And Ms. Moles, I don't know if there's anything you want to add here. I know you're going to be putting out some separate communications to those families, but we want them to know that those accommodations still need to take place.
Correct. This pivot that we took on Thursday was a big one for us. We firmly believe that the best place for many of our students with exceptionalities is in the school. And unfortunately, that's not going to be accessible to all of our students right now. So we are working diligently to get intervention specialists assigned to really going to delve deep into those IEPs at the start of the school year to make sure that we're providing the best services and really listen to the feedback that we received from the parents to make it better. Plans are in place and being developed. And again, I will be communicating within the next week or so with our families of students that have exceptional needs and what those services are going to look like for them.
Thank you. Again, there's a lot more to be said, with everything that we're having tonight, but we wanted to at least, we're almost an hour into this and, we even cut it short just to make sure we were able to do things. So athletics and activities, we'll be communicating an action plan. This one here, I think extracurricular activities, whether that be sports or band or clubs or wherever, I think that has been a lot of different communications coming out. Because of so many different communications coming out, I thought the best thing to do was to press pause until we could figure out. I mean, you had the Ohio Athletic Association come out with one thing, the Cuyahoga County Board of Health was something else, our league that we're in, the WRC, and you're hearing all these different things. So I guess what I'm going to say to everybody out there is here's what I do know is that our students are really hurting, and they are looking for every opportunity to have something, not just school. We all know that school's there, but they all have a talent that they choose, whether you are playing an instrument, whether you run cross country, whether you play football, whether you're into environmental, you want to be a part of the environmental club, and they need those mental outlets. So you would naturally think if we were in normal times, well, if I can't be in the classroom, how could you allow kids to do something outside? My thing is, how could we not? The fact of the matter is that, this is one of those cases. It's not the same running cross country in a big field in a park and then potentially being in a closed classroom with 15 people for 6 hours in that piece. And, maybe we don't march on the field like we normally do, but I was watching when they had the band camp and there were, 6 kids in a section over here, practicing, and it just was so good to see kids. And so, we have to make as many memories for our children as possible. And I have a third child getting married. She sat and watched her older sister and brother get married and said, someday I'd like to have a wedding like that, Mom. Well, she's getting married this year. She's not going to have a wedding like that. You can't do it. And so I know where you're hurting, where you have that senior, you have whatever it is. So I guess what I'm asking everybody is this isn't normal times. I know you can get criticized for this, but I'm not willing to shut those down now because I think there's some unique things that we can accomplish with our children. And I don't just mean band right now, and I don't mean the fall athletics because that's the older kids. If we find a case-to-case that there's an environmental club and kids can responsibly submit a plan because it's outdoors, there's a big difference between certain things. So I guess what I'm saying here is I think that's something that's going to be fluid. And the other thing I take exception to is when they talked about, I understand testing. And I read in one of the things that, if they're going to play somebody else, they have to be tested 72 hours beforehand. Well, in theory, I get that, but then the cost of it is astronomical. I mean, I actually read something from Dr. Kelly in Mayfield, and I haven't done the math yet. And he said it would cost somewhere minimally $250,000 to do what the Athletic Association is asking. I believe in being responsible, but if they're going to mandate that, then I think they need to make sure that they fund and support that. So there's some things that they're also making it literally impossible, as much as we don't want these things to go away, that they're putting such a burden on it that how do we even able to handle it? Then you get the haves and the haves not. Now, you might have parents that say, well, I can pay for it, but another parent can't. And that's just not right. So I guess what I'm saying to everybody is there's a reason why I said time out. Because let's not hurt the kids. You might say, well, why can't they come back to school? We are talking about two different things. We're not talking about hundreds of kids coming back into the building. Even, but we are talking, much different than 5 kids, a little bit different watching golf on TV because golf can do it. But, I'm finding out it's a little tougher for basketball to do it or different things. But, there's different stuff. So I'm just asking everybody for their understanding that let's not make a universal decision. And I want to let these kids have opportunities for as long as we think is safely possible until we can. And I hope that doesn't happen. So
I have to say I do like that, Linda. So I spent last night probably between 4, almost 6 hours just bouncing around to quite a few other board meetings. And I mean, California, Wisconsin, Nevada. I just kind of went on a stream and everything that was on live, I just popped in. And I will say what I took away from that is exactly what you said. The educational piece and the athletics and activities piece, I think, is different. Different in the sense that when you open up the school building, you got a massive amount of kids that are all going into one section. When you have activities and athletics, all kids don't participate. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say it's 100% safe. Don't crucify me after we click end. But I think that is almost like a small group collaboration of kids, and you give them an opportunity to have an out. And I think it's almost like I don't want to say a give take type deal. So the kids aren't in the building, pull them out, and then they can go do their activities to give them an out. Teachers in the building, they're not in front of kids. The threat isn't as large versus the kids being in the building and the teachers being there. So I know they're not equal, but to me, I kind of look at it like a little give take here. I'm just going to say it, and I know I'll probably get in trouble. I don't care. We know part of this recommendation process with athletics and activities is political. Let's just be real. From OSHA all the way down, from the colleges to the schools to the recruiting. We know that we are a small fish in a bigger pond of politics. Let's just keep it real and be honest. We can't sit here and stand up against them because they're going to issue the recommendations that make them function, fully functional financially. So I do think there is a difference between athletics activities and education. And on that note, the small things that our district's activities and athletics have already put in, to me, seem to be very thought giving. They seem to be orchestrated. I'm not going to knock something my kid isn't standing to be a part of, but he chose. We've been living on choices since March. He chose to walk away from band because his exposure to a couple other things were more precedent to him. So he chose that. But I think what the organizers have done with band these past few weeks, I think they were thoughtful. I think they were safe. I think they were. Now, I don't know how you're going to do football and how you're going to do, he goes to soccer. All I say to him is you shouldn't be hugging and kissing your friends and you shouldn't be blowing in their faces. They do run up and down that field, but I will say they are outside. So I do believe athletics and activities are different. People can beg to differ, but that's my personal opinion.
And I think this is one of those times that it's flipped. I mean, it is different. And I think what I want to say to the folks out there, the coaches and the athletes, they've been doing it all summer and they've been very responsible. And I think to a point that I had a parent contact me and she's right. They've been very responsible. And I think we're going to continue to try to, keep those safety mechanisms in place. They're choosing to be there. And I think I want to keep that moving. I did talk to Mr. Shamp today, and I've talked to Mr. Atwood. I asked them to press pause this week because, again, we were getting so much conflicting information. I didn't want to make a quick judgment, as some school districts have. You've seen it. They've already said no. And I didn't want to have to do that. And I needed some think time. If you could only imagine how many things I am rethinking every day. And I wanted to make sure that I needed think time. And so, I've talked to them. They're going to let their people know. They're going to resume their safe practices. And again, this is very fluid. Maybe 2 weeks from now, we'll get new information and we get surprised by something else. But I think we're going to continue down that path unless we hear something otherwise. So that's why it's the empty screen right there for that. Social emotional needs. We're almost there, folks, but it is so important. I think Ms. Thompson, again, I think the longer we're out of school and kids not being able to do what they normally do, like I said, even within my own family, again, my daughters, was, thinking about all these things were going to happen with their wedding. And then one by one, things are falling off the plate as time goes on. We're not going to be able to do that. We're not going to be able to do that. And so that really, that's hurtful. So, there's all different kind of things. So, Ms. Thompson, you want to talk a little bit more about on that, please?
The only thing that I would just say, as the slide indicates, we will have staff that will be available to support our students. We do have the desire to offer virtual groups. We have a host of service providers to support our students and families. So we fully intend to provide the support services that are necessary and required for our students and families to the best of our ability.
Thank you. And your group always does a great job. So a slide does not tell the story. Again, this is something that we really feel the slide's not going to be able to do justice to, but we wanted to let them know we're trying to think about everything. And Ms. Moles, I know you'll be reaching out with regards to preschool. Anything you want to add? Good. Okay. Again, to the point, it'll be available. And there'll be a daily schedule as well, just as we talked with regards to our school age folks.
Correct. And again, sorry, we are only going to serve our students with needs. I couldn't find the unmute button after all this time. Anyhow, we will be serving only our students with special needs in the preschool this year. So even with the remote learning, it'll give us a little bit more opportunity to hone in on some of those skills. We're going to desperately miss our peers. They're a valued part of our preschool and stuff, but ultimately we're hoping to be able to return to the building, and we want to be able to keep everybody safe.
Thank you. We're almost there. Again, I probably should give an update every time we have a board meeting or more, because there's just so much information coming. You're going to see on the agenda tonight a few things. Is we do have to submit a remote learning plan to the state of Ohio by August 21st. This could be very confusing. According to House Bill 164, you have the blended model and then you have remote learning. And you would naturally think, because we were offering parents two options, a school-based option and a virtual or online option, that's blended learning. Because sometimes you're in school and sometimes, but that doesn't how it works. So the bottom line is, when I asked you to approve, if we choose the blended learning model, we can't do remote at all. But if we choose the remote, we can do what I just described to you in our plan. We can do remote, we can do school-based. So we are going to ask the board to approve that this evening. The state of Ohio is asking just to us to submit it. They're not really going to say yay or nay, but we do have to submit something. So we want to get that out of the way. That is on the board meeting tonight. We're going to continue to communicate with our community. Cassandra and Ms. Jones and I were on the Lyndhurst board meeting, Lyndhurst council meeting last night. And I spoke with Mayor Ward. He was really happy with regards to our visit. He just wanted folks to know how hard we are working. And that, even though we, had to go from school-based to remote learning, just for people to know that, it's over 2 months worth of work, just has to be put on hold. But I think the work is not wasted because it'll help us as we move forward. So in closing here, do I have this? Okay. So this will be posted on the website if you have some more that happen. But some of your questions will probably be answers as we develop the schedules and everything, but we just wanted to, let folks know. And I think that actually,
before you leave, don't leave. Yeah. Before you leave, go back one slide for me. All right. I'm a little, hold on for a second. Explain that process again, what you said to me.
The remote learning? The
complete remote learning plan. And the state said, if you do one thing, you can't.
Okay. It is really, and again, I can, Dom, if you want to come in. So what the state came up with said, if the House Bill 164 in there, it says that you have to submit either a blended learning plan to the state by August 21st or a remote learning plan. So when Dr. Mount was here, naturally we're thinking it's a blended plan because we're going to do a blended learning where we have in class sometimes and, to some of our kids and online with the others. That Eric Johnson, our attorney, says immediately he says, absolutely not. He goes, it is very confusing language that's in that House bill. So basically you have to submit a remote learning plan. Okay. But that remote learning plan allows us to offer our school plan right here, which will be both, online learning and which will be school-based eventually. I know it seems to make no sense at all, but that is definitely the way that we want to submit it to the state.
So it's transitional. It's a transitional plan.
I believe so because, yes, going through, yes.
Yeah, because the remote plan is exactly what it is. You can go as many directions as you want with it. And the form submitted by the ODE, they gave us a little checklist to do. We put that together, actually it was pretty quickly after putting together the whole pamphlet. We already had all the answers in there. And they just wanted a checklist and they keep it on file as a reference. I think the ODE is really starting to compile these and look at different options for learning now too. I think this is another avenue for them to collect everybody's thoughts and everybody where they're at and take a look at it. Because like Dr. Reed said, they're not going to look at this and say yes or no. This is just a compliance piece you send into them. They keep on file, and where it goes from there, I don't know yet. This is new for us, but that's the biggest thing with the remote. It like she said, it just takes you all directions, so you're covered.
Right. Okay.
And that's why we went in so much detail in the book that Dr. Reed just held up that was submitted at the beginning of our return to school plan, and that's why we were so diligent about explaining the differences between school-based, between virtual, and between remote. And that remote piece is right there in the middle between virtual and school-based. It sits right in the middle and allows you to go either way.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. So in light of that, I do want to say one thing because I'm trying to be cognizant of the conversations that I've heard and had out in the community. So first, I want to say we've done a heck of a lot of work since March. And I say we lightly. I'm like the small E on the we because you guys are like the big W and the huge top part of the E. So we did a lot of work. And the one thing I want our constituents, our community, our teachers, our administration, our staff to understand is that it wasn't in vain. I don't want anybody to walk away from here thinking that all the work we did is kind of flushed down the toilet. So the conversations we had in the beginning almost set us up for this position that let us know we're planning for this, but we could go here, here, or here. And we prepared ourselves to be able to take any one of those routes that they throw at us. I think the difference is that, I'll say for me, I expected the county to turn purple before the Department of Health and the county collaborated together to issue a recommendation, and then for the stuff to turn. That is what I expected. That didn't happen that way. So we are still having to go another route. So the one thing I want to say is that we didn't waste our time doing it. I don't want teachers to feel like they wasted their time doing it. It's almost like you said, it just looks a little different. So the other thing that I want to say is all the parents, all the families' forms that were submitted about their choice, do those choices of options of learning just kind of stand still in the event we go back to the other option to where the Department of Health recommendation can be pulled and we can do a model with some in school and some virtual?
Yeah, we a few things, and my team's welcome to chime in. We had folks that said from the start we want to do, virtual, the ABA Academy. And so as we get through these upcoming weeks we would plan on recontacting those folks and have a plan of how we're going to migrate them to the ABA. At the same time, watching to see what the local rating is for Cuyahoga County. It's fluid. So, I can't say for sure. As we see that all of a sudden that, Cuyahoga County gets better and the trend is, for weeks has been going this way, we should start to plan for green. Okay, with the ideas, what we had to do is all of a sudden it spikes again, we know remote because we already know the remote piece. So I think that's the piece where we have to be prepared that, at what point does it become the fact that do those virtual folks we all keep staying remote? I guess we have to keep evaluating is if our county still stays really bad and that looks like the trend, we're going to have to start making decisions, I guess, checkpoint decisions on and be ready to pivot on a dime. Okay, so it depends on the trend and the data. I'm hoping that this is why I said that we need to continue to work with our custodial staff. We've been marking sidewalks and marking things in our building. We need to continue to do those because we want to be just ready to go if all of a sudden it's saying that we have, I don't want to say have clearance, but it's safe for that type of environment and be able to, but meanwhile, we'd be working on what those in-school schedules look like. I would hope to think that maybe, this is just off the top of my head, I don't mean to get anybody excited. I think there has to be some type of consistency, both for our teachers' sakes and our students' sakes. So I don't see it being a wild change in schedule. There might be tweaking because I do think for everybody's sanity that has to be consistent. It just might be more in school. To Jem Moses' point, we have students that have special needs. So those would be, working to come back school-based and working with our teachers and things like that. So yeah, we're going to have to monitor this on a weekly basis to see how we land up, moving.
Okay, and then the last question I have is, so families will have those requests still on standby. We're at a level 3 now. I mean, to me, that's like knocking on the door of level 4. I think it would be a big difference if we were at 2 or 1, escalating to 4. So that's it. And then the other question I have is, just like the standby notices of families choosing how they want their children to be educated. So I know all of that preparation we were doing for teachers to do a lot of that work out of the building as well. So that process of having those discussions, and correct me if I'm wrong, so it seems to me like those discussions weren't a waste of time either, because all of those safety things that are in place, the only thing that would be missing now are the physical kids. So in essence, a big portion of the safety risk is being taken off the table because the kids won't be there, but the teachers would be in the building, which would allow more social distancing for them and alleviates a huge risk of the kids. So with that being said, is that just like teachers are reporting to work like usual? So there's not, am I right with when I think that? They're reporting to work as usual, which would have been their regular contract to report to work. And now they're not working virtually from home, so to speak. So there's no adjustment to their duty to report to work, correct?
Right. Yes. So I think a couple things we're looking at. I think one of the biggest concerns, and again, if we have students listening out there and different, I don't want you to take this wrong. I think one of the biggest concerns for any type of teaching staff, not just in SEL, I have children that are educators. So when you have a large volume of kids coming in and they're changing of classrooms and different things, that maybe could increase the likelihood of a spread. And so we were actually with the mindset that kids were coming back. And so that's when we start to, you'll see later tonight, I'm going to ask the board to approve a face mask policy. We right away came out with a K-12. At first we thought 312. In our first discussions with the union, they were concerned that K2 kids should wear it too. There really wasn't much discussion. We changed that immediately. And now you're seeing other folks making that recommendation. You'll see in the plans it said between 3 feet and 6 feet. Well, that wasn't good enough for us. We always said it was going to be 6 feet. And again, people were saying the recommendation was that you didn't, let's depend on the parents to take the temperature at home. Well, I'm a mother of 3, I'm busy, I forget, And so we were always going to take their temperature before they got on the bus, before they get out of their car, when they get out of their car. And so I guess we were really looking, and those protocols are already in place. You've got to remember, we've had employees back in the building since March. And so we have had to do those protocols for those folks. It's just not about the teaching staff. We have had to protect our secretaries. Our food service workers have never missed a day on Saturdays and Sundays with the kids. So all those stuff had to be in place. And as a good employer, you have to make sure certain things are in place. We have folks that were concerned, secretaries that were concerned about people coming up to their desk. You will see, Lenny, if you're listening, our carpenter, you're excellent. He built things to make them feel safe. So those are things, we're putting 6 feet markers on the ground. So if you're at a copier, you got to wait 6 feet back, just like people are used to waiting in the grocery store line. And so those are things that we have in place. I think one of the things when you talk about staff coming back to the building and now more staff, I think we still need to be mindful to make sure that there's isolation. I think one of the good things about it, if I'm a teacher, I'm in my classroom by myself. If we feel like we have an area that, is a tight area with regards to school counselors, well, we're going to have to move that. So the face mask policy goes for anybody. We've had to have that. We've been doing it anyways without it, but one of the promises we made, we make sure that we have that in place. We're going to give each employee a face shield for those of you that, can't have it. So, to answer your question, these are things, we've been back at work for months. So these are things that we had to do, and we, feel like we're in a good position. Again, there's 2 big things out there for anybody that comes back to work, not just teachers, but our secretaries and everything, is childcare, and my own family is going through, what do you do with childcare, and so a lot of folks will struggle. What we are going to try to do, we do have a thing right at school, which is going to be our child care provider. Ms. Bussey had a meeting with them today, a weekly meeting, to see, to tell them that we may have staff members that need access to that as well. And the other piece is, in this whole thing, regardless, whether it's a teaching staff, administrative staff, and our OPC staff, is we have folks that may have health issues. By law, we have to address those. And those are regardless. So I guess what I'm saying, the teaching staff is coming back now, but we've been doing this for months with our other staff who have already been back at work. And that's a private thing. So that's not something I can get into in detail. That's protecting HIPAA and privacy. So that's something that might be new to some folks, but it's not new to us. And, we're bound by law to be able to do that. So, it obviously involves, a process, but we actually feel like not having the kids at school. And again, if the kids or students listen, I don't mean anything with that. That actually really, not want to say minimize, I never want to use that word, but that really reduces some of the angst and the fear. So with that piece. Other than that,
thank you.
Okay. So slide here. Oh, yes, Ms. Falkenberg.
I'm sorry. I had a question. As far as the planning, you talked about the principals getting together and planning for this day forward. And I think somewhere it said about the BLTs that they were going to be part of that planning. Are the BLTs going to be, and I don't know if this is already the case, the department chairs in the different grade levels and departments at the middle and high school going to be part of that planning?
Okay. So
yeah, so
that's Mr. Gabriel's area. Go ahead.
So what it's going to look like I said this evening a couple of times, the BLTs is a building leadership team. Their role is going to be critical, and absolutely, the nice thing is a lot of the facilitators and department chairs are part of the BLTs, but absolutely they're going to be involved in our construction of our daily schedules of asynchronous or synchronous and those type of things.
Okay, thanks.
I think the other thing to answer your question, Ms. Jones, as well, is that when you talk about, maybe think about the planning, because I think there might be angst out there. We have a collective bargaining agreement in place that says that, teachers get, elementary teachers get a 50-minute duty-free lunch and a 50-minute teacher-directed plan, and they get some pre and post time, the 15 minutes. Those are things that have to be honored. So no matter what schedule comes up with, those are things that have to, we have an agreement. We just rolled a contract. That agreement is in place. We're not changing that. At the secondary level, it's, 40 minutes and 40-minute plan, 40-minute lunch, and I don't know what else they have in there. So you can't mess with that. If we do, according to collective bargaining agreement, there's a grievance process. So when they're developing these things, but we're also going to be mindful to our teachers as well as our students. We know that you can't sit there in 7 hours in front of the screen. So we're actually being more flexible when you look at that. And let's keep in mind that, our art, our music, our phys ed, and our library, our media, those folks that's going to look a little different to them. How are you going to do phys ed remotely? We value those folks. We're talking about, again, Ryan Dugan working with some of the phys ed teachers. So I can see almost incorporating, that in, we are into the day. And that's another time that, I don't know how Mr. Cable's doing, but I was over listening that's even more time to give that content teacher some relief time during there. So, to answer, there might be remotely, but there's a contract in place and we have to respect that. And those are things that Mr. Cable will work with building leadership team. And I think to Catherine's your point, you might have a department chair that might not be on the building leadership team that can bring value to a schedule. But I think those are things that need to be discussed, with the principals and the BLT, but they needed to start somewhere. And I think I understand why you're asking that question, because they do have value to have some input from. So I know that was really long, an hour and a half.
No, but it's worth it. Don't feel bad that it's long. It's worth it.
Okay. So I'm going to come out of that and go into the agenda and pull that back up. If you give me a moment here. I have this up here because I am going to ask one of the first items on there for the board to approve, and I'm just going to hold it because it's just so hard. When we talked about this on July 14th and we had it sent home to parents. Really, folks, it's what we're living, and that's why I'm bringing it up, because if you look on page 8, we always said that, we didn't know red was going to happen so fast. But if something changed because of a COVID consideration, and there's just so many different things, we would have to do this, so that's why it's happening quicker than later. But we are following what we said we would do. It's just was a lot probably for folks to take in. Let me get out of this. I need to stop presenting that, and I need to get something else here. Give me a moment.
My apologies, Linda. Are you going into 3.1 or are you still in 2.1?
Okay, so I'm actually just came out of 2.1 and I'm going to go into 3.1. Can you see it?
Yep, we'll go into item 3, superintendent's item, school reopening plan.
Okay. And I'm going to give you a second. I got to readjust my screen a little bit. It probably looks a little funky, but I think we can. Let me go here. So, really recommend to the Board of Education to approve the Responsible Restart Plan 2021. It is attached there for folks that are accessing, and I'm going to hold it up again. This is what was sent home to folks on July 17th. It is on our website. And again, going back to the stoplight thing, the best thing I can tell you is that is actually been a part of our plan. Again, if you look at page 8, it does say this is, what will happen if a health consideration comes into play.
Okay. Are you trying to open it up?
Yeah, it won't go really quick. When you look at this, you can read it right here. Here's the roll call, and
okay.
If I open it up, I can.
No, I'm able to access it. We can all access it on Board Docs, and we can go back to that email. Okay. I don't want you to burn that energy opening that up.
Okay. Oh, okay. Let me get. Let me go back here. See, there it is. There, if you can see it, and I'm going to close it up and go back to the agenda. Okay.
All right. May we get a motion to approve item 3.1, the school reopening plan?
So moved. You can have it, Aaron.
Sorry, Neil.
I'll take the second.
Aaron on motion, Neil on second. Any questions or comments?
I just want to, thank the administration and the teachers and the entire staff for all of their work and efforts. We all know this hasn't been easy. It's frustrating as board members. It's frustrating as parents. It's sad when you have your children tell you that, they're going back to sleep like my freshman just did, because he's like, can't go back to school. What am I going to do? I'm tired of being home. But I really appreciate the time, you spent going through so much of the detail. And, we have almost 600 people watching the meeting, and I appreciate them all being part of this and listening to what's being offered and the amount of time and attention. It's definitely going to look different than it did when we were online in the spring. As a parent, that makes me feel a little bit better because I know my kids struggled. And so I really appreciate all of that work. And I'm excited, for the teachers. I'm excited, that all of the things that they're going to have available to them with the technology and the support and all of that. And I realize, being in the school might not be their first choice, but, having all of those things available to them to be able to give our kids a better learning experience, because we know that's what we all want, is, really exciting. So thank you all for your time.
Yeah, I did have just one question. This was the union approved this, correct? The what we're voting on.
No, the union did not approve it. That's not something that needs to be taken to the union. No. You're talking about, Catherine, this right here, the restart plan?
Yes.
Yeah, to answer your question, no, it's not. It did not require an approval by the unions, all three unions, if you're asking.
What the unions were involved in, though, Catherine, was the MOU and the input that they provided, and with developing those health and safety standards, so that when we were going in person, that we were providing a plan that they were comfortable with. And so those same standards will be used now, that they'll be in the classroom, but the kids won't be there. So that was how they were involved in this process.
Right.
Those were shared with you, yes.
Hearing no further questions or comments, may we get a roll call, Mr. Hill?
Ms. Lee Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Bloomberg,
Aye.
Ms. Falkenberg,
Aye.
Mrs. Jones,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan.
Aye.
Here, under 4.1, one action item for certified staff, recommend the resignation of Karen Valenza, curriculum coordinator. As I mentioned, I think at last meeting, Karen had taken a full-time job at Brooklyn City Schools, and she's going to be, I think, an instructional coach through the Educational Service Center of Ohio. She's been with us a long time. We wish her well, and she's done a great job for us, and we look to keep in contact with her.
Thank you for that, and congratulations on her transition over to Brooklyn. They definitely will have some knowledgeable help on their hands, especially going over as an instructional coach. So I wish her well as well. May we get a motion to approve item 4.1?
So moved.
Second.
Bloomberg.
Neil and Aaron, any questions or comments? I do have a comment, and because it's something that we always tend to say, remember, we don't replace exact for exact. So that is a coordinator of curriculum administration at the administration building. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're looking to replace her. This is another opportunity where we have already started cutting the pie differently. So just want to put that out there.
And we've actually just recently talked and looking at, because we're going remotely and everything, there was a recent posting that went out that we thought we might need to have a need. And we have, just as you said, decided not to replace this position. And Ms. Moles has done Gifted before. She will help us with Gifted again. And again, I think her title needs to be Director of Exceptional Children, because that is not only increasing. So if we do a title change, I don't want everything we're asking, but I think to appropriately see her scope of work, that you're going to see that we're going to redo a job description and be a Director of Exceptional Children, which includes Gifted and other students with special needs. As it comes to the other piece that Ms. Valenza was going to do is 712 curriculum. Matthew Bryan, our new principal at Memorial, and Mr. Williamson, Mr. Capel, and even myself as a former curriculum director. This is those times when they said, put it in together. We're all going to put our minds together, and we're going to try to save money there, and we're all going to have to work a little harder. And that's not going to be replaced right now.
Thank you. May we get a roll call, Mr. Hill?
Mr. Bloomberg,
Aye.
Ms. Lee Harris,
Aye.
Mrs. Jones,
Aye.
Aye.
Ms. Falkenberg,
Aye.
Mrs. Jones,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan.
Aye.
And let me just give me a moment here. Just want to make sure. All right. So what you're going to see, and I hope that you see it in front of you, is, we talked about it so much, it's the revision of the school calendar. It's because of all the changes that we've had and more time we needed. And I hope you can see we wanted to get it right, and the prep time is going to pay off. So asking for approval of a revision of the calendar, which really changes the start date for our teachers and students. August 17th to August 24th for teachers, and then September 8th for students. And I believe it was, I think maybe August 21st was before. So asking for approval of that calendar to reflect our new learning experience.
All right. May we get an approval?
5.2. I got lost here in my own moment. The 5.2 is what we talked about, the remote learning plan. I know it sounds confusing, but again, the state is, because of House Bill 164, and I really was asking the board to approve a resolution. This is something that we have to submit by August 21st. I don't want time to get away from us. Again, to Cable's point, it really allows us the flexibility to do what we want to do in our plan. A virtual academy, a school-based, remote learning, and believe it or not, it doesn't seem like it makes sense, but through all our council advisement, this is the right submission that we need to do. And then 5.3, approval of the academic technology innovation items as presented.
All right. May we get a motion to approve items 5.1 through 5.3?
So moved.
Second.
Neil and Stephanie. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I have heard from a lot of teachers. I know many of them are glad that they're going back to the classroom, finding the structure helpful. Some were wondering why they didn't have the choice of teaching from home. Is there a reason that went into that? I'm sure there is.
Cut that question off real quick, Catherine, and allow us to vote on this because that's not in this subject. What we're voting on right now is in regards to changing the schedule and the remote learning plan. That's a question that can be asked at the Board of Education comments.
Come a little bit later.
I'm sorry?
Not to deviate from what's being voted on, Catherine, we'll ask your question a little bit later in the order and we can answer. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So, question. We're in the question and comment. No, can we vote on it, please? We need a vote for 5.1 through 5.3.
Mr. Bloomberg,
Aye.
Mrs. Ryan,
Aye.
Ms. Falkenberg,
Aye.
Mrs. Jones,
Aye.
Ms. Lee Harris.
Aye.
This item we almost forgot about. And if you remember, Officer Joe DeLillo has become a part of the South Euclid Lyndhurst family. We are doing this on a year-to-year basis. It's our partnership with the city of South Euclid. He has just immediately, if you don't know him, he's just immediately become such a great part of our family. I know we're going to remote learning the first 9 weeks, but that relationship has been built. We see a bigger value to continue that relationship. And we actually think, Officer Officer DeLillo is going to play a role in really helping reaching out to families. We're going to have to go to families' homes and different things. And he just has such a great relationship. Going into a new school year, and I want to be sure that we include him as part of our plans.
May we get a motion to approve item 6.1?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments?
I just want to say I greatly appreciate Officer DeLillo. Even this summer, he's been out when the boys were practicing football at Memorial. He's been bringing treats. He's been making sure he's checking on them. He's been riding up and down the streets, checking on the kids, playing basketball with some of them, as we saw that video. But he has really made his presence known for us. And I really, really greatly appreciate that. And I know a lot of our community members do as well. So thank you for building that relationship, Linda.
No problem. Don't know if he's listening, but we're just so excited. Spoke with Mayor Velo this evening and Chief Nieder, and just let him know how much he's become part of our family, and we just really think he's a great bridge for everything. So forget about before we get moving along here.
Perfect. Hearing no other questions or comments, may we get a roll call, Mr. Hill?
Mrs. Ryan,
Aye.
Ms. Lee Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Bloomberg,
Aye.
Ms. Falkenberg,
Aye.
Mrs. Jones.
Aye. Going right into item 7, Board of Education, 7.1 being Superintendent presents the following policy for first read and preliminary review. South Yuba Board of Education will be asked to vote to adopt this policy. Policy 8450.01, face mask.
If I could, and I don't typically do this, but this is such a new policy, and wait till I open it up to see all the strikeouts that I did, because and I'll tell you why, because it is in it that, and this goes with our conversations with CELTA leadership, there were some areas and choices that were just we had talked about that just would have made it too soft. And so what I want folks to know is this is a policy. There's never been one like before. We did our best shot here, but I also want you to know there are guidelines you'll see in the last paragraph that needed to be developed. I didn't want to develop those guidelines just yet because I'd like to work with some staff members, some parents, and I'll tell you why, because you'll see that all face masks are required, but you're going to have maybe some folks that say that their child is a special needs child. So I think those are some of the things that we need to work with those families in the guidelines. My fear was, again, having the conversation with CELTA, was if it looked like we had all these exceptions, then nothing could be enforceable. So I want folks to know, whether parents listening out there and staff and teachers listening out there, those are things we have to go in the guidelines. So bear with me for a moment. I try to make it simple. Believe it, after we take all this stuff out, it'll be simple. But no, the guidelines piece is going to be important. And I think that should be done in collaboration. And I'll just give you one example. A discussion was, we first said, well, if 6 feet of social distancing could be maintained, then you don't have to have the mask. And to the, I don't know, maybe Tim brought it up, says, well, that should be up to the teacher's discretion because it's kind of hard to know whether a kid's going to walk by. So we're coming up with so many different scenarios. You're going to see a point in there that we say that, that they're all required, but it can be under teacher's discretion, and we put administration. The reason being is, I told my secretary when she can't take the mask off. Obviously, when she's in isolation, she can't. Obviously, we have a custodian working by himself in the boiler room and it's hot. That makes sense. The teachers kind of are in charge of their own classroom, so they know better, and that might be. So bear with me here. I'm going to open this up. Can you see that? All right. So I'm going to see if I can make it bigger a little bit.
It's not showing up at all.
It's not showing up at all, huh? Mm-hmm. Shoot. Let me see if I can present it. Let me present it as a window. And
I was going to say, Linda, your other profile isn't on. That usually pops up when you're presenting.
Yeah, I don't know. I got a new computer. Can you see it now?
Yeah. No, I see you said join, so that means your presentation.
Yeah. Listen, I'm going to need if I'm going to be doing this through December, I'm going to need 2 big screens here, but I'm getting better at it. So you can see, again, if you look at the first thing, it just talks about during, pandemic, during these elevated times. Yeah. So here's the important thing. Look at the green thing. So all the red was different choices about when people wear masks. And to me, it was just too open-ended. So basically what we said, and this is what we talked about with CELTA, is all K-12 students, all district staff, and all visitors are required to wear face covering while on district property. So that's why we scratched all this out. There were too many different variables. Okay, that was one thing that we want to be clear about. Okay, so I'm going below the red section. If a face mask covering are required and no exceptions are applicable, students shall be subject to disciplinary action in accordance with Student Code of Conduct Book in accordance with board policy. That was also another point of discussion. And if somebody wasn't compliant it would be, again, this becomes a part of, I don't want to say our dress code, but I guess so. I guess about, keeping people safe and healthy. So when you go to the next one, you see this green X here. And we talked about this, and this is why I checked it. This was an option. If we really feel like, this is when we thought we were going to school-based learning starting off the school year. If we thought that we had a student that not because of special needs or anything, but just was being defiant, that the superintendent could have the authority to say, hey, we've tried this. You're compromising the safety of staff and other students. We think the remote or the virtual academy is yours. So that's a piece that I'm trying to make some points here to make an understanding of this mess. I don't want to say mess, but you got to understand this is how policy works. I don't want to present to the board stuff I've already taken out. I present everything that the policy is and our choices, and I try to show why the selection process is. It will clean up. So then I'm okay that the face mask covering could be this. This is what the board's saying. And then there's something about here that it says that, surgical masks are acceptable. Well, I crossed that out because one of the things we talked about, if a student or a staff member forgets their mask, we have those disposable surgical masks. Well, I think that's okay for a day. We actually have other people that have cloth masks that actually kind of go below their nose. So it doesn't really matter what kind of mask, it's properly wearing it and that thing. So that's why we crossed that out. Here it does talk about if somebody comes to the building for identification purposes, they can be asked to, remove it, in that piece. And let me see if I've got here. Wait. I know there's a piece that I put in. It might be further below when we talk about at the discretion. I apologize. I'm going to try to make this bigger here. Hold on. Let me make it as big as I want. I think all employees shall wear the requirements of appropriate dress code and policy. Any person may require a temporary removal of the mask or covering when the instructed to do so for identification purposes. Failure to comply with such requests violates this policy and may lead to disciplinary action. Furthermore, here it is. We added this. A teacher or administrator may use their discretion to allow for the removal of masks in classroom or work areas when social distancing requirements can be met or adhered to. So again, those are some of the things we looked at. Everything that's scratched out here were all the exceptions. My fear was that there were so many exceptions, and you don't have to go with them, is that it would be really hard to enforce and be confused. What I'm telling folks is I think this is when there's a value of conversation. When we get to this last paragraph here in green about the superintendent developing guidelines, is really meeting with different stakeholders to talk about what are some of the guidelines that everybody can follow. And I'm a special ed teacher, and I have a high need student, and not, there's information about children of autism. So when is that appropriate? So, we have to also be reasonable. And so those are some of the things I think will come in the guidelines because it doesn't apply to everybody. It might apply to certain situations or certain populations. Making sense so far? Okay. This just kind of defines the face shields a little bit. And then when you get to the bottom here, you can read it, but really what it's saying is the superintendent shall establish guidelines. There are no guidelines on this, folks. Usually Neola sends guidelines. There are no guidelines. So we're really reinventing everything. So I'd like to do is get the policy read, get it. We're probably going to have to move the August 25th meeting up. I'd like to move it up a week if we could, because I really want to have this approved before we bring anybody back. And we can talk a little bit later. We do need to go to an executive session for personnel, but I want to I want to keep our promise. I want to keep the train moving, and this is being presented to the board as a first read. I don't typically go through it with you, but I thought there was a value to understanding why the strikeouts, why the additional information, and why did we take such tough stance that really Neola didn't give us. We wrote that line in there. That wasn't a choice. So, okay. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Tonight, but
No, that's okay. Thank you for that clarity on there. And hold on one second.
I can stop sharing it if you want. Okay.
No, that's fine. I have the agenda over here. So we will have that in for first reading. Wait a minute, I'm lost. We don't need to vote on that. That's just
no, it's just a first reading.
Yeah, perfect. First reading. So I know we have a need for executive session, and I noticed we don't have a section in here for board questions or comments. I don't know if I'm out of order, but there's one question on my list of to-dos that I did not get to. And it's regarding the calendar. So we have the revision of the calendar. And I know you don't have a lot to say about it, but can you tell us a little bit? One big portion I think we missed our Excel Tech students. How are we incorporating our schedule and our calendar with them? Or are they pretty much all correspondence needs to come from Excel Tech? That's one big percentage I think we forgot a little bit.
Sure. So I think a couple things, and I don't know whether Mr. Williamson, he's so on top of this. There will be more communications coming up, but how it always has worked is this: we have one Excel Tech program, and whenever our program starts, our students start, is when that Excel Tech program will start in SEL. So exercise and science will start on September 8th, because that's when the first day of students are. If we have students that attend a Beechwood, and Beechwood starts on August 31st, and they start their culinary arts on August 1st. That's those students, 5 to 8, who go to that program, start when that host school starts. Because there's 10 host schools, they're a little bit all over the place. That's how it's always been. So our students have been used to that. Whatever the program they're in, they follow the calendar of that program. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense, because we talked about that when we dealt with spring break, how they could be on spring break at SDL, but not on spring break at Excel Tech. So with that being said, like you used an example, if one of the programs starts before ours, so is our busing system in place to be able to transport those kids if they start any of those programs before our start date?
Oh, yes. I don't, our bus drivers usually came back in a couple weeks. What it is, to answer your question, they'll be back definitely to provide services before that.
Okay, and then the other question I have is, once our schedules come out and our kids are on remote learning, what does that look like? Would they almost like log off of their portal and then they head over to their Excel Tech, and then when they get back in time, they log back in for their other classes? I know you don't have a concrete answer, but I'm just trying to visualize this transition sitting at home at a kitchen table.
Yeah. How about, Mr. Cape, you got that? And I was going to say, we can always elaborate, because I want to give correct information, but go ahead.
Yeah. I'm not going to give anything too serious, but just so you know, Ms. Jones, and like we spoke before, that's a nice thing with the flexibility with the remote learning piece for those kiddos. Mr. Williamson will have them scheduled so that they can log in and be ready to go in the mornings before they would go to Excel Tech. And I was just in correspondence with Mr. Williamson. He attached me on the email tonight that he sent to Excel Tech about our kids not starting physically in the building until the 8th, and then asking all the other schools what their safety protocols are if they are going back to school, so we can relay that to all the parents as well of our Excel Tech students. And he's been in constant contact with Mr. Bishko over there, and they're working through all that. But again, if an Excel Tech kid got into a scheduling conflict, that's what's awesome about Schoology and our cameras in our classroom and the remote learning piece, where everything's being archived and students' attendance is going to be taken the next day, not the live day.
Okay, I appreciate that insight. Now, since you made that statement, I have this question. What, in the event that our kids head out to Excel Tech and that information is communicated, what if parents feel their standards of safety are lower than
I'm glad you asked that, because I was going to tell you this. If it's okay with you, I had a conversation with Mr. Williamson. I gave we had a list about this big, okay? I will forward you the email that we sent to Mr. Bishko. We love Mr. Bishko, but we sent it because what we said if we are going to transport our children to another program and it's not at the level or the standard that our parents are expecting or we've done here, we want to know that. And so I will forward that to the board tomorrow, because we want answers back to know that we're transporting our students, and that I guess we're trying to hold them accountable as well. Because I know we're learning remotely, but my question becomes, if we were in a school base, we're putting them in another program and they do come back, then we got to make sure that they're following the tightest standards that we are. So it doesn't fall into play. I still think we owe it to our families and our students to know what Willie's Lake has, I'm not, and what all those other school districts are doing. So I will forward that to the board tomorrow. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. Sorry to deviate from the plan. Is there any other questions that anybody on the board has? I know we're kind of on information overload, but I don't want to forget anybody.
Did we ask about busing for private school students already?
I think, well, we're still going to follow the two mile minimum, which actually a lot of it would eliminate, not that we did that for that purpose, but we're doing that because of the less amount of kids on the bus. Don't quote me, but one of the local school districts or the non-publics, I thought they said that they were going to be doing remotely. So there's going to be hardly any busing. Typically a special board meeting does not have that part of the board to ask the question, but Catherine, you did start to ask a question earlier about choice. I'll answer as best I can, but if you can clarify when you mean given a choice about what?
About whether or not to teach from home or to teach in the building. I've heard,
Would there be a reason behind it? I guess that's what I need to understand with regards to, is there like a health reason why, or is there, I don't want to know, but I mean, so I think that, is there a reason why they wouldn't want to come back to the building?
Right. Some feel that their instructional, the cameras or whatever, and of course now we have cameras you set in the classroom, but are better at home. Others, there are some with some health concerns.
Yeah. So I think the piece that everybody has to understand is, first of all, we actually, we do have 200, I guess I thought 150, but Mr. Cable corrected me. We have 200 cameras. They're brand new. The thing they got to remember too is, and I think other people said that's at home when everybody was on it, a lot of people were freezing out. I think by being back in the building does a number of, and I'll answer your question, does a number of different things. I think the technology is stronger. If they're having an issue, we got help right there. Again, if I'm an art teacher, I'm a visual, I mean, they can kind of, I can use I'm in my room. I have all my stuff. I have all my supplies. That makes your job a little bit easier. I don't know if, Mr. if he's doing an experiment, I don't know, maybe they do virtual ones anymore. I don't know, but you have all your stuff there. And so I think you're really not even simulating, but the best you can. If there is a reason that a person, it's not really even a choice. If a person feels they have a health condition that qualifies them not to come back, and that can be anything that the CDC is saying, or it's even other stuff that we had conversations, and I don't want to get into personal things, but people have other issues that are not on that list that would really qualify, that may be, an issue. But, being in front of students is one thing, but maybe being alone in your classroom, those folks don't have the anxiety anymore. I don't know that. If that's the case, by law, we have to address that, not just SEL schools. Every employer would have to address that. So I would, encourage to go through that process that we have. If is for childcare, if they cannot get care, they are afforded 12-week leave. It is 2/3 pay, but they are afforded that. We are trying to provide a child care services. So I'm not saying we can do everything, but we are trying to be mindful of working parents. Like I said, we've been back at work for 5 months, some people 3 months, and we've been kind of doing this for a while. And so that's the piece where I don't want to say not give them a choice, but in a sense, if there is an issue, there is accommodations and options that we are obligated to offer. And that's what I would be telling them. I hope that answers that.
Thank you.
Can I ask this question, Linda? Just and clarify if I'm wrong, because I'm trying to keep a thought process as well. So with the teachers returning back to school, in essence, they are working a contract. So we can't get to the point to where we're peeling individuals out of a contract to create a choice, so to speak. Am I correct? And then
right,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And then two, like you talked about, there are FMLA rules, there are COVID guidelines, there are opportunities. And I don't mean to be funny, but I told a coworker today, you have options if you do not want to report to work. Now, granted, they might not fit your financial picture and dreams, but you have options. Am I wrong to say that? I mean, not say it to a person, but to think that.
No. Well, it's by law. We want to be sensitive to that. So if the fact, I think what the game changer might be here is there probably was a lot more anxiousness. I'm not just talking about SEL teachers. We've got to remember, I have families that are educators. My children are. When the students were there, and students, please, it wasn't about the students. It's about a number of people being in the classroom. The more you around bigger groups, then the more the likelihood. So I don't want people to think that it was about the students. It's just about the number of people. How's that? I think once that went to remote, and I'm working alone in my classroom, I'm not spraying desks every time a new group comes in. I think that sense is that anxiousness, is relieving. However, if there's a person, it doesn't mean just CELTA. I mean administrator, I mean CELTA, I mean an OPSI. If there is somebody that has a health condition, then that the appropriate route is to go through, and by law, we have to address that. And I think you go through that, and we have to at least try to make some reasonable accommodations, and also try to give a value to their work. If there might be a different way, they truly have a health issue, and we find that we can give a value to their work, then do it. Sometimes it might be harder to do it with a bus driver, but with a secretary, you can. And I'm not saying one's more important than the other, but you understand there's certain ways there's certain jobs that are a little bit easier to make accommodations for than others. Not that we think one's more valued than that. So what I'm saying is, it's just not about the teaching staff. We owe it to everybody to make sure that we follow things by law, and that's open to everybody. That wouldn't be just help. That's OPSI. I mean, even with childcare, that's OPSI too. And folks need to know that. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for clarifying that. So, does anybody have any more questions, board members? Aaron, Neil, I can't see everybody's picture, so hearing none, we'll go right into item 8, executive session. Under law, the board may hold executive sessions to discuss matters of personnel, litigation, property negotiations, and they are kept confidential by state and federal laws. We are going into we're going into executive session to take no action, and it is regarding personnel and legal matters.
And you know what I'm not going to do this time, Mr. Hill? Hold on one second. I'm not going to stop streaming until you tell me the meeting is adjourned. Because I always do that. And everybody else, I was going to tell you, if I could real quick before you do that, I would like to have, if it's okay, I'd like to have my my administrative team stay with us in executive session, if that's okay with folks. And then nobody else has to sign off. I'll just stop streaming when Mr. Hill tells me roll call is done, because I always mess up.
May we get a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Aaron and Stephanie, we will go into executive session. It's 8:13 p.m. Thank you, everybody. Almost 500 people watching. We really enjoy having the viewers. I think we're pushing out a lot of information. So we want to thank you all. We hope we covered majority of your questions. We know we won't hit everything, but shoot those questions out on the website or to the administrators or board, and we will definitely try our best. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
All in favor?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Can I do it?
Aye.
We're good.
Now
All right,
you can
Mr.
hit the button.
Now I can hit stop streaming. I always mess up. Okay, I'm stop streaming. Okay, hold on.